Ladies and gentlemen, not only do we have some delicious Canadian black metal for us to sink our teeth into today, we also have some delicious Canadian black metal from my hometown of Mississauga, Ontario. Hell fucking yeah. The Sons of Perdition Chapter 2 Render Unto Eden is the latest entry in a multi-part concept album series from Panzerfaust. One that analyzes and explores generations of violence, war, and injustice, in turn translating and adapting that history, those experiences, into incredibly harsh and bleak Canadian black metal, which in true Canadian metal fashion has been pulling influence from across the extreme music spectrum and even from outside of it. The last album, for instance, played around with some very atmospheric soundscapes, a lot of influences from war metal, and a lot of influence from traditional Canadian poetry and literature as well. Not only does Chapter 2 Render Unto Eden continue the conceptual and musical paths paved by Chapter 1, War, Horrid War, but it seems to explore even further into the consequences and ramifications of our actions through history. Saying here in a press release, Sons 2 drags philosophy to the front line, bending the mirror back on the best and worst of our human instincts. The men of our ideals have never been men of peace. Sons 2 documents this perpetual failure, wherein the realization is ever clearer, that the air is human, and these truths, like all truths, are paved in blood and darkness. As such, the album immediately feels very stark, very grim, very anxious, as if you are seeing the world through the eyes of a soldier, a general, a politician who has the weight of the world on his shoulders and is tasked with making impossible decisions nearly every single day. To emphasize these difficult decisions and positions, the band intentionally drags out all of their songs as much as possible, with all songs clocking in between 7.5 and 10 minutes long, and taking full advantage of repetitive, almost mechanical rhythms, droning noise, and some very anxious and uncomfortable soundscapes. Take, for instance, opening track Promethean Fire, which consistently has you on the edge of your seat, thanks to its never-ending build. The tension continues to rise but never quite boils over, and it makes everything feel so uneasy, so uncomfortable, particularly with its use of minimalistic percussion and rhythm guitar and its very powerful use of clean vocals and choirs. When the catharsis finally comes, it in fact comes in the form of the following track, The Faustian Pack, which by comparison is a lot noisier, a lot dirtier, a lot more gnarly and gory. It has a lot of dissonant noise, a lot of snarling vocals. It almost feels like something pulled more out of the realm of Portal or even Imperial Triumphant than out of the realms of Canadian black metal. True to the song's title and to some of the themes we've talked about already, it really does feel as if the person in question, whoever they are, has now had to make that terrible decision, and they have had to compromise something of spiritual or moral value, making this all the more devastating. This 1-2 hit combo of Promethean Fire and The Faustian Pact is hands down the best thing on this record, but don't think for a moment that that statement means the band suddenly resorts to lesser material from here on out, because that is not the case. Take, for instance, the behemoth-esque blackened death pummeling of Areopagitica, perhaps the most sonically brutal cut on the record, or the incredibly flexible yet dominating nature of closing number Pascal's Wager, which contrasts a lot of samples and ambient noise and cleaner guitar passages with some incredibly hellish and blatant brutal black metal. I particularly love the almost Opethian use of acoustic guitar in the song's final moments. The song even weirdly seems to act as an inverse to the actual philosophical argument of Pascal's Wager, as if we are seeing people sonically debate in the song as to whether or not God is real. and in relation to the themes of the actual album, perhaps questioning the existence of God due to the consequences of the actions they've already committed. I also found that on repeat listens there was a new side to this album that I feel like I may have accidentally stumbled upon, but nonetheless, with all of the information I've established in mind during my second playthrough, I somehow began to look at the album as if I was looking at it through a PTSD-inspired episode. And it made the album all the more potent, all the more striking, all the more horrifying. This Sons of Perdition album series is proving to be the most ambitious thing that Panzerfaust have ever assembled, and perhaps one of the most unique things to come out of Canadian black metal in recent memory. And with that in mind, I feel more than comfortable giving this latest entry in this series a very strong 4 out of 5. If you're looking for something more dynamic, more savage, something that represents real-life brutality in black metal, this is where you need to go. It really is that simple. And even if you're not 100% sold on this general theme, on these general philosophies, check the album out regardless, because it has some seriously punishing material. I'm particularly impressed by lead vocals from Goliath, who showcases a lot of range and a lot of power on this record, and by the production team, which have done a fantastic job at balancing every single bit of noise, disarray, and confusion into a relatively clean and tight package. I guess to put it real simple, it just so consistently rules. I am extremely excited to see where this album series continues to go in the future, what themes and what philosophies Panzerfaust will continue to dive headfirst into, and how the entire series is going to sound when we have all of these pieces assembled together. I have no idea how it's going to turn out, but I can tell you this: if the next 2 parts are even half as good as the first 2, we are in for a truly wild ride. Chapter 2, Render Unto Eden, 4 out of 5. Definitely check this thing out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately, and you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.